like 95 through 98 that are super incredible. So tell us a little bit about that and kind of how that all came about and what that was like.
Well, first off, I was known for making mixtapes, and that's how I came up, was making my own mixtapes. And I would take these mixtapes, and I would go to each hip hop shop, record store, and I would put all these tapes on consignment. Like I drop off 10 here, 20 there, and then I'd wait a week, and then I'd go and collect. So that's how I gained notoriety, first through my mixtapes. And I used to actually make my own mixtapes. I used to cut them out. I didn't have a computer back then, so I used to cut out stuff and break out the Elmer's glue and cut myself out and put it on a backdrop of like me on, I don't know, like Mount Fuji or whatever. Like, you know, I just, like I said, I had a wild imagination. I used to make my mixtape covers. I used to go to Kinko's and make the copies, and I used to sell these mixtapes. So that's how I gained notoriety for making a name for myself, and that's how I used to help my mom pay bills, was through selling mixtapes. And my mom was like, "Where are you getting this money from?" I'm like, "Well, alongside other things, I'm selling mixtapes." But along other things. But anyways, not to get into that, but I'm just saying, like, that was the first step of me gaining notoriety, is through my mixtapes. And then from there, I went to school with a partner of mine called DJ Apollo, and he was a pretty well-known DJ in high school. He had a mobile disc jockey group. He had all the equipment, the Technics 1200s, and this was before I even touched the turntable. I used to make these tapes off of 2 tape decks. I couldn't afford turntables at the time, so I learned how to make actual compositions from using the pause button and re-looping certain parts of my favorite records, and I used to re-loop in 8 bars here, 8 bars there. So I'd make these compositions and put on these mixtapes, and people would think that, wow, where's your studio at? And I'd bring them to my room, and it was like one JVC tape deck and one Fisher clock radio. I go, that's my studio. And with all these low bias tapes, I don't know, I mean, cassette tapes were the thing. And from there, I mean, Apollo caught wind of that, and he was like, man, this guy's nuts. And we had like aspirations on starting the first ever turntable orchestra band. Yeah. So people were like, we had MCs approach us. Oh, we want to MC for you. We were like, no, we're going to become a band of our own right, and we're gonna actually make records our instruments. And so I started cutting the drum, and then cutting up violins, and then cutting up bass lines, and scratching the hi-hats. And we're like, we don't need to play none of these instruments. As long as we have these on record, we can re-manipulate these sounds and come up with our own compositions. And so that was the beginning stages of how the first ever DJ orchestra was assembled, was with me and DJ Apollo. And from there, I had DJ Qbert come to my house parties that I used to DJ at, and this was like before he was a DJ. And I always noticed this guy like watching me at these garage parties. I'm like, this kid's like just like standing by the speaker, just like listening to me. And it was Richard Quitevez, and later known as DJ Qbert. And so I brought him over to my house and showed him the first steps of scratching. And then from there, we started battling each other. So there was a big rivalry. And then Apollo came in and said, why don't you guys stop battling each other, and why don't we form? Why don't we just form like Voltron? And so that's what we did. And we formed the first ever DJ orchestra. And yeah, and then that's how that started. And then we won DMC championships 2, 3 as a team, as singles, and from there started the Invisible Scratch Pickles. And how we made that name was like, really doesn't mean anything. Really. People are always like, why Invisible Scratch Pickles? I'm like, I don't know why. Because it just sounds fly and it sounds intriguing. I don't know, it doesn't really mean anything. Like Red Hot Chili Peppers, like what? Oh, Red Hot Chili Peppers, that's a bad name. We're thinking, Invisible Scratch Pickles sounds pretty way out, you know what I mean? It's like way out, like scar your mind type thing, like, oh, that'll forever be stamped in your head, like, and really doesn't mean shit. So, but hence the name, and kind of made a name for ourselves. Yeah.